Well, good morning. This is time to start. Welcome to our meeting, and it is a great pleasure to start with our panel session on a very interesting subject, challenges in the field of biotechnology. I first of all would like to thank the organizers for this kind of invitation. Biotechnology in the fields of healthcare, food and agriculture industries. I think that nowadays those are important challenges. This is perhaps the century of biotechnology. This morning we have here with us outstanding lecturers, Professor Johan Deisenhoffer. Professor Johan Deisenhoffer, Nobel Prize laureate back in '88, chemistry, professor from Texas University. He's an expert in structural biology. As you all know, this is a very important field for new biotechnological skills. We have also Josep Castells, chemist, president of the Science and Technology Institute at Barcelona. Here, next to myself, Mr. Luis Pons, Director of Infrastructure at Valdebrón University Hospital, Professor of Chemical Engineering at the Polytechnical University of Catalonia. And here, to my left, we have Luis Antonio González, Professor at the University of La Laguna, Canary Islands. I think a first approach to this very interesting subject could be trying to tackle the following question. How about the challenges and next challenge for biotechnology? Where are we now? Where would we like to be within 2-3 years? How about the current challenges? Perhaps at the laboratories they're working on that. So, ongoing subjects in the field of biotechnology. This is the question. Let's try to elaborate on that. If you allow me, I'm going to ask, first of all, Professor Johan Deisenhoffer. Would you kindly tell us where we are now, the ground we're standing on now, and how about current challenges? Sir?
We have come a long way since I entered biology in the early 1970s. There was, of course, biotechnology was always there in the form of alcoholic beverages and bread and cheese, but it was a time when people were developing methods to really influence the behavior of living organisms. And right now, and so a lot of people talk about the 20th century as in biology as a century of deconstruction, taking things apart, trying to understand the parts, and now we are in a phase of construction, that we now try to put things together and try to understand how they work together. And one of the buzzwords is systems biology, where we try to understand biological systems. And of course, all this is influencing the course of biotechnology. Perhaps one of the most ambitious projects is right now to construct a living organism from scratch. And I'm certainly not the person here to talk about this. There is Dr. Hutchison, perhaps in the audience, who could say a lot more about this. But this is an attempt, and the reason to do that, in my mind, is an attempt to prove that we really understand a living organism. And the proof would be to put one together from its parts. And I think that is in a scientific area is the current goal of biotechnology.
Thank you very much. I think this is a wonderful target, trying to construct a living organism and trying to see general rules in order to have this construct. And I'm going to ask now Professor Josep Castells, what do you think about this challenge, and perhaps what are laboratories doing now? What are they doing now? Good morning to you all. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for this kind of invitation. It is a great pleasure to participate at this outstanding forum. And in the same line of thoughts as Professor Deisenhoffer has pointed out, there is a great importance. Along the 20th century, we tried to learn. We tried to get a background, to get knowledge together. And from now on, the way we are moving into the 21st century, according to our viewpoints, we are starting from a very practical approach. Considering biotechnology, we are specialists in industrial biotechnology. Challenges ahead for us, important challenges. On the one hand, we have scientists, as Professor Deisenhoffer mentioned, but on the other hand, we have challenges in the implementation, trying to see that what we've learned along the 20th century is really useful, and what about to be presented along the 21st century? We should get implementations, not regarding a volume of application, but a diversity of fields, applying then biotechnology the way we've applied chemistry along the 20th century. This is a big challenge, trying to improve sustainability of our planet and productive systems without having to reduce or to diminish welfare and quality of life. We have to get a level of sustainable production that will be feasible thanks to industrial biotechnology, we hope. Thank you. The question goes to Professor Luis Pons from Catalonia. I'd like Professor Pons to concentrate on medical sciences and into practical grounds. How about this challenge for the future, biotechnology in healthcare domain? Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for this great effort. It's a wonderful meeting at a moment where we are, in the middle of a crisis. And one of the biggest crises we could have in the field of technology is, exosomatic technology, moving into endosomatic technology inside the body. And then I think that we have a great opportunity to grow out of this crisis. There is a process of integration of different systems. One of the characteristics of systems is getting wholeness, getting this holistic approach. And then this is what has always happened. A chemist, for instance, at a given point in time, can make great contributions in the field of, medical sciences, and a chemist can contribute to medical science too, and then information technology, chemistry, biology, all together are implementing miracles within sciences of life. I prefer, instead of biotechnology, I want to talk about sciences of life. And then we have actions and implementations that are more specific, moving on from, the length of a meter into a centimeter, into microns, into nanotechnologies, and that is representing a domain where we have different viewpoints and actions and interventions that are more specific. And for me, the big challenge is the technological gap, social gap, human gap. The world, on the one hand, developed world, and on the other hand, we have less developed or developing worlds. I'd like to elaborate on that, because sometimes you have a wrong vision, only the world that's developed as a vision, and we want to know the importance in developing countries also. Now, last but not least, the question goes to Professor González, Luis Antonio González, from La Laguna University, chemical engineering expert. I'd like to know if there are business areas, domains, where we could in Spain move into, thanks to emerging biotechnological knowledge. Where are we, and how about challenges? Those are the questions. How to implement this into more practical grounds. Thank you. I'd like to say that as a member of the university, and I'd like to thank the organizers, and I'd like to thank the lecturers for this important meeting. We're going to start a wonderful debate, and this is a wonderful campus of excellence in the field of business and more practical grounds. I'm going to talk about food industry. There is where I try to work, and in the field of biotechnology, we have a project. We have here 20% of food industries are using biotechnological skills. That represents crops around 70,000 hectares, almost 100,000 hectares. And by 2015, we'll have a great percentage of crops based on biotechnology. And here we have that represents biotechnology as a way to implement technology. And those are big challenges. Not only compliance with what's required, but also we'll have to convince populations that this is feasible and this is healthy and that there are no problems at all in the case of these crops. I'm going to elaborate on agriculture and biotechnology. This is what's now taken into consideration: new varieties, genetically modified organisms, and as Professor Werner Arber said yesterday, in a short while, and knowing the information we have, we think we'll be able to create and to modify organisms to have vegetables that will be safe, vegetables that will be strong, that will resist different challenges, and where the level of water is very low. And that is a challenge that was mentioned by Professor Werner Arber yesterday. The challenge is also that in the case of Europe, we have rules and regulations in Europe that are very strict, and they suggest that when you have experimentation, you need labeling and you need to prove that's safe. So that's the first step in this field, I think. Thank you. In the same line of thoughts, as we've said, I'd like, if you allow me, to consider that in this domain of biotechnology applied into food industry, well, we see controversies. Is it safe? Isn't it safe? you've mentioned that at the European Union we have rules and regulations we have to comply with, and we think it's very interesting to have those rules. I think it's very important to see what might happen thanks to genetic engineering techniques. Do you think fear is justifiable? People having certain feelings against what's been genetically modified. They're reluctant. Do you think that's scientifically justifiable, or is it non-rational as an approach? I think that really we have here, this is like a Pandora's box that's open, and out of the box we see lots of things. My personal opinion is that we have to keep on with research and investigation in order to confirm once and again that that's safe, and the production of genetically modified food does not mean risks for health. And then it's been demonstrated that, of course, we comply with protocols, so products are perfectly safe and well implemented. So nowadays, no impact. Nowadays, no impact on whatsoever due to being genetically modified. I'd like to say, as I said before, that it is not only getting in accordance or complying with rules and regulations, it's convincing the population, because that's the way it is. Yes, I don't know if we all agree about it. Do we have a consensus? I'd like to know what your viewpoints are. Perhaps Professor Luis Pons would like to elaborate on that. What do you think, Professor? Isn't it dangerous? Well, I think that we're talking about risks, and risks have different dimensions. We could measure risks. It's like a mathematical approach, but the important thing is the social perception of risks and how to manage social perception of risks. And it is through communication and a dialogue. I think this is the most important thing. We have to communicate. And prior to giving the floor, I think that we have Professor Soria, I think, Professor Bernat Soria from the University of Alicante. Perhaps he would be kind enough to join us. He is here with us now. Would you be so kind to perhaps come up to the podium? Yes. Oh, you prefer to stay where you are. Okay, whatever you like, Professor. You can contribute from your place. Thank you. And now I'd like to continue. And Professor Johan Deisenhoffer, would you tell us, do you consider that safe, that type of food? Is it safe? Do we have a consensus?
Well, it cannot be said it is safe. It cannot be said it is unsafe. In general, it always depends on the particular case. But I would like to say, I mean, human beings have modified crops since the beginning of agriculture. We have always taken steps to select the best and maybe look for properties that are especially favorable for agriculture. And so one could see the creation of genetically modified crops as a sort of a shortcut to the traditional methods of selection. But the discussion is a little bit, or would be a little bit different if you have people who are at the edge of starvation discuss genetically modified crops, or people who are swimming in a big pool of food and have problems trying not to eat too much. And so for those who are in danger of starvation, I think the question is not existing. I mean, if you can make a crop that can grow in a salt environment, that is much better than nothing. And so you have to be more specific in talking about genetically modified crops. We cannot talk about them in general.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. And what do you think, Professor Josep Castells? Are those genetically modified crops safe? Would you eat them? I'd like to say that I wouldn't. I do not see any problem. I would try them. The problem is there is a social concern due to certain circumstances, and there is a perception of risk. Sometimes it is something that this is a problem that is very important for our society. And I think that here media are playing a very important role. What I see is that regarding the media, it is given a lot of importance to what's, against what's happening. It's been critical against what's happening. And when they try to communicate, for instance, what's been created, what's the result of innovation or advances, that takes like a second role. But whenever there are problems, whenever you could criticize something, then they magnify this in many fields, not only in the field of food industry and biotechnology. And I'm going back to industrial biotechnology. We have an example. We have biofuels, for instance. Biofuels, there was a big debate, a controversy, a social concern about biofuels. I don't know how the prices started going up. Raw materials were getting more and more expensive. And they were saying, those were nonsense. They were saying that biofuels were pushing up prices in the field of food. And no one asked the question, what's happening now? Biofuels used in many fields. How about food prices? Now we see it's 1/4 of the price we had before. That scientifically proves that what was said was wrong. That, no one had presented this. The way at the beginning they used to say when prices were going up, the media were presenting this at the front page. Now prices are going down, no one is talking about it. So we have to enhance communication, not only about what's bad or what's going wrong, but also we'll have to disseminate the information when we have benefits from biotechnical advances. As a journalist, and I teach at the university, and we always say that bad news are very good news for publishing, we say. And the truth is, or almost, the truth is that we are working for people who are interested in getting bad news more than getting no news. And it is true that we're not playing the proper social role that we should play regarding dissemination of scientific information. But there is a debate, people, regular people, they have a word to say, and we can all participate in this debate. And Professor Johan Deisenhoffer said that, we've been always modifying, throughout agricultural techniques, we have a selection of vegetables and animals, but what's my concern is that this modification is in the hands of companies, given companies nowadays, and perhaps the crops nowadays and development might acquire given characteristics, pathological characteristics or diseases, and we would need to use chemical products to fight against this. And those chemical products, or those pesticides, are produced by the same multinationals. There is an ethical issue there. Countries having biotechnological power, companies which are powerful, are those that might control food industries and even food intake, because we all know that companies are free to do whatever they want to do, and it is very good because they are there for profit. They are profitable organizations, but there should be a control, a certain level of control. What do you think about a control? That's a question. Professor Johan Deisenhoffer, what do you think about having a certain level of control? Most of the companies are based in the States. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I'm perfectly in agreement with that demand, because the company is there to make a profit. It's not. Its primary purpose is not to serve mankind. So we, as citizens, have to make sure that the companies are considering our interests, not just those of their shareholders. That's clear. And I mean, this example is obviously the one that is the most, how do I say, advanced in the food industry. The corn species that is resistant against a certain herbicide, and here the problems are really, I mean, very, very fundamental, because it has turned out that it is not possible to confine this genetic makeup of these plants to just the fields that are planted with these seeds. It's spreading through the biosphere, and apparently nobody has really thought through what this means. And so I'm very much for control. Unfortunately, it's always difficult I mean, many political systems, including that of the United States, has some tendency towards corruption, and the power of the companies is really something to be concerned about.
Would you like to establish nuances? I'd like to add something, not only corruption, but we've talked about corruption, but those who are corrupted, but who is triggering corruption and the ranking, because do we have a classification about corruption? I think that someone's tried to measure corruption, but this is not easy. I think that we're going to have other panel sessions about corruption and how to measure the level of corruption. There is a problem of transparency, and people should know about practices within different companies. Transparency is important, so I share the concerns presented by Professor Deisenhoffer, Professor González, Luis Antonio González from La Laguna. I think that the underlying factor there, and in the same line of thoughts, what was presented by Professor Castells, I also agree with. There are fears there, fears regarding food industry promoters and biotechnological developers. People fear results and the effect on the market, and that fear is translated onto different factors. But is it justifiable? You who are working in the field, one thing is what's conveyed by or to media. The population, perhaps people are not informed. Another thing is your vision as insiders, as part of the matter, the discipline, knowledge. Fear, perhaps, is it justifiable? Well, in the same line of thoughts, no problem. I would have genetically modified foods. It's not about, being healthy or not. We're talking about some vegetable and some species, and sometimes they're using pesticides, some plant species. And how about this? Because we're in the hand of some multinationals in the field of biotechnology. I think that regarding the pesticides and the fight against diseases, in the case of vegetables with biotechnology, what we're going to have is, that we will have better treatments and more effective treatments. We have the possibility of developing vegetables that will be, or plants that will be extremely healthier and more resistant. Plants that will become more resistant. And perhaps this is something that pertains to the same company. So the company will develop the treatment and, of course, perhaps there are some political problems, trouble, and imagine what will happen, because we'll be in the hands of the companies. Before, we were not in the hands of any company. I'd like to tackle a different subject that seems important in the field of biotechnology also. Other domains witnessed a lot of progress. For instance, information technology. Along the second half of the 20th century, but we do not have problems with information technology. We consider there is transparency in food industries and agricultural industries. We are talking about technology of life, and that's different, as one of the previous speakers said. And I follow with great interest what Bernat is trying to create synthetic bacteria. Philosophically, I think this is a very important item, perhaps one of the most important developments, perhaps since Galileo, because we are taking inert materials, components, and we are creating life. Bacteria are forms of life. Bacteria, the simplest form, and that's a definition of God, creating life out of nothing, creating life. And this will be, feasible perhaps within a few months, synthesizing bacteria. But there are ethical aspects there that should be taken into consideration when we tackle these technologies. I'd like all of you to elaborate on that, about ethics in the field of life creation. And would you elaborate on this? What about fears? How about the biggest fears you might have regarding this approach to biotechnology? Biotechnology and ethics. Professor Johan Deisenhoffer, what do you think about it? Would you elaborate on this? Thank you.
Yeah, this is a very, very timely and important point. We are indeed at the edge of an ability to create living organisms, and do we really want to do that? As I in my first contribution, I mentioned that from the point of view of science, this is the proof of principle that we have understood what is a living organism. I think that is very, very. I would very, very much hesitate to talk against this, because you have to, if you're really a scientist, you have to go this way. but what will come out of it? That is the big question. Are we stopping there, or are we continuing? And then sooner or later, there will be human beings involved in these kinds of experiments. And maybe there are already, and we just haven't heard about them. But it is absolutely necessary that society is educated about these things. And as somebody said before, for the press, bad news is good news. That is a really troublesome development, because the press loses its function as a sort of an impartial observer of what happens, and gets into the field of propaganda, and then becomes useless. So what other sources of information can we create or provide to keep the people educated about what happens? I think that is the first and important step in thinking about these matters.
La prensa en general. Press in general is reflecting what's happening, and it's like a mirror image of a society. It's like Prometheus, it's like Frankenstein's creation. And the truth is that scientists sometimes are not aware of what they are doing. They are working at the lab, and those are experiments one after another, but they want to take a distance to say, what about the difference? God and what we are doing, we're creating life out of inert matter, and that is seen from a distance. And firstly, taken into consideration our Western culture, there is a rejection about it. What do you think about it?
I'm not so impressed by this aspect of creating life out of inert matter. I think this is actually how it happens, how it happened a long time ago on Earth, that molecules organize themselves somehow. We cannot know yet how it worked and how it happened, but then once it had happened, there was evolution, and there was survival of the fittest, etc. So I'm not so much impressed by this, but the image of Frankenstein and similar things is, of course, strong. And I mean, we are many miles away from that kind of situation. But the earlier we start thinking about and discussing this, is the better.
Okay. Professor Castells,
what is the fear you have, ethical fear maybe? Well, first of all, I would like to make a consideration, and that is that the difference between human beings and animals is precisely that they use knowledge in order to modify their environment, to make progress and to achieve much better living conditions for their species. I think, therefore, that knowledge in itself is not bad, but we have examples that are dual. They may be used wrongly or rightly. And for example, we have a very clear example, which was the knowledge about fusion, nuclear fusion and fission. We have two aspects in that. One, that it is used to kill, and the other one is that it is used to obtain energy, power, and to live better thanks to it. There was also a big controversy which started in the adventure of Craig Venter with regards to the human genome, because wrong manipulations were expected. Negative results may happen, but the society should have weapons, so to say, to correct the situation rather than to correct the knowledge which really makes it possible to improve the living conditions of the human species. And on the other hand, in this case, I believe that we should encourage the study of these aspects, but I would closely monitor the use and control the use of that knowledge. Luis Pons Puiggros, do you have any specific fear? For some years I have been studying the processes of fear and the processes of denial, etc. There is a big part of the mechanism of human beings that uses those mechanisms to protect themselves, such as bereavement. Bereavement has to be gone through, and before hope looms. And I would like to change our discussion and into hope. Therefore, rather than denying that we are getting closer to this Prometheus or Frankenstein or whatever, well, I'm not going to go into this game of religions or anti-religious, this dichotomy, because we're talking about a planet where there are very hostile environments for the population. Having 10 million people who do not have access to drinking water, electricity, or food, well, I think that we should get rid of this cynicism and this lack of solidarity, and we should focus around the key points. To summarize, I would like to say that fear shouldn't make us lose the necessary hope. This fear is surmountable, I should say. Yes, I agree. Professor Luis Antonio González, what do you think? Well, I would like to say that research will follow its own way, and when the time comes, we should opt for the interesting and positive part. I would like to be more specific. There is a holy grail. Is there a holy grail in plant technology, which is nitrogen fixation? Nitrogen can be fixed or bound with bacteria, and it would be interesting to see those bacteria, either from experimentation or not, might bind nitrogen in cereals. In this way, we would be able to obtain a product, a cereal, that could be rich in proteins, and therefore, one of the main problems of this world with regards to famine and food, well, this big problem could be improved greatly in this way. Yes, I also agree on this approach. I would like, well, we have Professor Bernat Soria with us. He doesn't require an introduction because until very recently he was the Minister of Health Care. I know that there was a newspaper, El Mundo, here in Spain, who criticized him because he wanted to authorize research in embryo stem cells. At that time, we had a rightist party in the government, and he had many difficulties. I think that in general, journalists defended him and his option. I would like to know your opinion about these ethical problems that may be derived from biotechnology. And if you think that this approach of fear, which is prevalent in the media and in some organizations, if this approach can really stop scientific development. Well, I don't know if he, well, somebody can give a microphone to him. I was asked to ask this question to him. I'm sorry for this sort of impingement on your silence. Well, first of all, good morning. I would like to clarify that I'm not sitting there because I accepted the invitation to come here as an attendant, just like the others, as a member of the audience, and therefore, yes, I was asked to ask your question. Yes, I've seen that too. But I'm delighted to be able to contribute to this reflection, to this general reflection. Rather than fear of biotechnology, we are afraid of technology. And this happens everything that is a technological new development. In the field of medicine, we have many examples, but also we have examples from other areas. And as indicated here, technology in itself is neither good nor bad. It's the use of technology that makes a difference. A scalpel in the hands of a surgeon saves lives, while in the hands of a criminal, of a murderer, it kills, but it is not for the fault of the scalpel itself. We need technology, and the best demonstration is that when researchers try to find, searched for bones in Atapuerca, and they found technology near those bones, primitive technology, of course, but technology after all. For example, an axe or molded stones, well, which is early technology. Well, they started to have a better knowledge about our ancestors. Man is Homo faber, the man who does things. We work, therefore, in the area of technology. And biotechnology is just another technology which may have good or bad applications. But we live in a highly regulated society. This is why the transgenic products that you mentioned before are much more regulated than other products. They are protected by high security level. A transgene is just a sequence of nucleotides. When they get together, they generate the same risks as genes. Transgenes and genes have the same risk or present the same risk, but transgenes are highly regulated. I would also eat without any problem transgenic chicken or potato, although the outside aspect of transgenic chicken are horrible, or is horrible. So, but on the other hand, I think we should say something else. The media and the society are talking about natural things as something which is positive, and about technological things as being negative. And it may be the other way around. People always say that, well, this is natural and therefore it is going to be good necessarily. But natural products may contain toxins which may poison us without any antidote. Many marine animals, sea animals, produce toxins against which we don't have any antidotes. The fact that something is natural doesn't mean that it cannot be toxic. And in my practice as a physician, I saw patients, well, in Southeast Asia, you know that the traditional Chinese medicine has a very good reputation. They prescribe a lot of herbs, and I have seen liver failures as a result of taking those Chinese medicines based on natural products. Therefore, what is natural is not necessarily positive, and we should submit it to regulations also. Our country is also submitted to regulations, but I think that this idea that what is natural is good and what is technological is bad has nothing to do with reality. And with this, I finish my comment, my reflection. Yes, the reflection concerns ethics. Ethics is everybody's ethics. Then those ideas about Prometheus, who, yes, actually stole the key for wisdom. Well, yes, this is the wisdom we need to generate technology that allows me to speak into a microphone so that you may hear me and so that people may follow in this debate. On the internet, technology goes from the toothbrush to bed sheets, heating systems, showers. All this is technology, and technology is helping us to increase our life expectancies and to be happier. Good use of technology should be regulated by law, by the law, and by ethics that we all promote, support, lay ethics, which is not only based on a specific way of understanding life, which sometimes rejects other ways of understanding life. Societies have developed new ways of relationships between people in which the vast majority of people reach higher well-being levels. If, in addition to that, technology allows us to solve the problem of hunger in the world, which is terrible, and lack of medicines, so much the better. And I think that the new technologies will help us in this, because it's indicated in the debate, the model of the pharmaceutical industry based on chemistry is getting depleted. The development of a molecule costs 800 billion euros per molecule, and this, well, of course, will not be affordable very soon. However, biotechnology can develop the drugs for specific niches of diseases which do not have a treatment yet, because we should not forget that there are thousands of diseases today for which there are no treatments. Sometimes because the niches are very small, those diseases sometimes are rare, and biotechnology or technology may help us find treatments for those diseases and for others for which we haven't found a solution yet. Well, I'm going to finish with an example. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. The life expectancy during diagnosis is 2 to 5 years. There is no treatment whatsoever against it, and the patients die because the muscles get paralyzed. When the respiratory muscles get paralyzed, the patient stops breathing. If you say to somebody with this disease, look, I have to use biotechnology, or I have to use stem cells from embryos in order to find a treatment, I don't think that this person will have too many reservations with regards to that treatment, because for ethical solutions, we should also take the patient's pain into account and the pain and sorrow of their relatives. Thank you very much. I like this positive and hopeful approach to biotechnology. I like it very much. We're coming to an end, to the end of this part of the session, but we are going to give the floor to the audience now. Does anybody want to ask any questions before I ask some questions myself? Yes. The questions, the cards are being collected. But in the meantime, I would like to talk about something. It is true that chemistry, well, we have the impression that it is something that belongs to the 20th century, especially pharmaceutical chemistry, because there is now a new kind of research which is based on biotechnology and on genetic manipulation to some extent. But I would like to know this. With regards to the existing diseases and with regards to not only healthcare problems but also environmental problems, how is this biotechnology helping, or how can it help in the near future to solve some specific problems? And I would like to ask this question first of all to Professor Castells. Well, precisely, this subject precisely is the backbone of industrial biotechnology. Using biotechnology as a bio-tool for the production of some products. It doesn't mean that it is going to eliminate chemistry. They are not in opposition. These are two tools that must be used with intelligence. We must improve the existing products to generate less impacts on human health, environment, and workers' health. And those two complementary tools work in a very efficient manner when they are combined. If we want to move from an extreme to another, we will also find problems. And here the question is to use the microorganism-mediated processes such as biocatalysis, the use of raw materials coming from renewable resources as another tool towards having a better knowledge about more efficient production processes, and which may solve problems that we have detected. We should take this into account rather than criminalize things, because, for example, in this area today, the chemical industry, in spite of its poor image, is one of the industries which has the highest level of awareness about environmental problems. The chemical industry works with a more positive approach to innovations in the area of production. But we keep the image we had dozens of years ago when the chemical industry caused big problems in human health and environment, but those problems were corrected, or those wrong approaches were corrected. But nevertheless, with the use of biotechnology, progress can be much quicker. But all products, including natural products, are chemical products. After all, everything is chemistry. There are not so many differences between both types of products. Yes, if a product is made based on a microorganism or on a biocatalysis process or through an extraction process in a plant, after all, these are chemical products for a function that human beings need or believe they need. It is interesting that in humanities people don't realize that that is chemistry. A question to Dr. Deisenhoffer. Which are the future challenges of biotechnology to solve problems?
A number of things on the horizon. I'm thinking of, for example, the discovery of new natural products. I don't think we have seen the vast majority of natural products yet. And I have colleagues at my institution who take regular trips to tropical seas or other places where they collect organisms and screen them systematically for new compounds. That's one thing. The other thing is the Human Genome Project was mentioned, and at that time, when it was started, it was a really monumental undertaking. But biotechnology has progressed at such a pace that we can now think of doing genomes of individual people almost routinely, and therefore get a much better idea, if you're a medical doctor, a much better idea of what kind of medication a person will react to in this way or that way. And I think this is a revolution in medicine, and it is made possible through biotechnology. So I would say overall I see more in the terms of hope than in terms of fear.
Muchas gracias. Le traslado la pregunta al profesor.
Thank you very much. The same question to Professor Luis Pons, who is the Director of Infrastructures at the University Hospital of Valle d'Hebron in Barcelona. I repeat this question about specific challenges. And in his specific case, I would like to ask him if biotechnology-based medicine is going to make the healthcare expenses much higher. Well, I'm not a specialist in economy of healthcare, public healthcare. I think that my knowledge in this area is quite limited. But what I always understood is that we are in a system in which the stability point would never be reached. And this is due to the tension that exists between trying to get the best, to make progress in the care of patients. I agree on what Professor Bernat Soria said before. One of the things that impressed me most when I started to work as director of infrastructures was seeing people when they arrive in hospitals. They come with anxiety, worries, tension, and I think that what we should give them is a humane, personal treatment, apart from providing good technological services which in part are expensive, but on the other hand, if we consider the cost per medical action or per patient, I think that we have achieved some optimization level. I also agree in that the use of drugs in this area, we should be more rational in their use, because there are much more specific ways to act on diseases. I think that we are facing major challenges and opportunities and expectations regarding the future of this sector. I think that this integration of technologies is going to be very positive, but most importantly, we shouldn't fall in technological shyness, so to say. And in my hospital, the managers have determined that the priority is the patient, the person, and trying to avoid failures. But as they exist, we want to take advantage of them to improve our knowledge based on our failures, and then to take a look at other frontiers which were unthinkable before. There is a center named WIDER of endoscopy. I see very, very short, extremely short surgical procedures with a treatment, a surgical treatment which is going to operate just on the specific point where the abnormality or the problem is located, and this should raise satisfaction amongst all of us. Professor Antonio González, do you think that biotechnology is our best tool short-term in order to put an end to hunger, which is such a big human problem? Do you think it would be the best tool? Well, I wouldn't dare say that it is. What I think is that thanks to the biotechnology, we are still having, or we're getting closer to preventing deaths due to food deficits. Well, I think that we already produce enough food to feed everybody. The problem may change on a mid or long-term basis, but it is affected by water deficit, I believe, or by too high consumption of proteins in many countries. And I think that the challenge we see is the challenge of biotechnology. It is there. We just need to take a look at figures and see what is expected and planned for the future, the advantages of biotechnologies in terms of food production, the production of biotechnological food. Those advantages are there because we have already seen several cases, and therefore I think that based on biotechnology, it is possible to produce food with more nutrients than today. This is the case of rice, for example. It is the case of cereals, where for the first time we can see amino acids such as lysine, and we can increase the concentration in some nutrients, specific nutrients. But I would like to mention something else, because that is quite new. I would like to mention something about the future, something that may become very successful, and it has been considered as being a negative experience in some cases. And this is genomics and nutrigenetics. Based on proteomics, it is based on using food in which some genes have been identified, genes that can cure some diseases, so that in specific points in time, a person might follow or could follow a diet based on those food in order to cure, for example, intolerance to lactose and milk indigestion. These are many fields which have a very promising future for humankind. Well, I am delighted to be here in this forum because this, when I'm amongst scientists, I always feel this positive tone, which is very necessary in our world. I think there are already the questions from the audience are ready.
Vamos a hacer
going to start now with questions. Professor Deisenhoffer, we've been talking about big biotechnology companies and the marketing of products. There is a question. Professor Deisenhoffer, what do you think the technological volume of application will be? Do you think we'll have lots of spin-offs? Do you think we will see in the short while a growth, an important development of small companies in the field of biotechnology? So the opportunity of company creation in the field of biotechnology, could you elaborate on that?
Well, I think most of the biotech companies start as spin-offs from universities or research centers, and usually using an idea that promises some commercial value, and many of those disappear without trace after a few years. A few of them reach the goals and really realize the potential of the idea, or let's say proof that the idea was a good one. And these are usually becoming part of then big companies who have the money to buy those. And I think that is at least in America, the pathway of innovation in biotechnology is that these small places become part of large company but at a reasonable profit for those people who started them. I think that's what I want to answer.
Thank
you very much. There is another question. The question goes to Professor Castells. Well, Brazil is nowadays producing 6,200 megawatts of bioelectricity. So utility companies in Brazil based on ethanol or biodiesel, biofuels. The question is, what about benefits, profits to small and medium-sized agricultural producers, and what about benefits for the big ones? Are all of them getting the benefits, the profits, or just a bunch of them, a group of them? Well, as far as I know, in the case of Brazil, and I know very little about it, but we do have contacts with them. We do have contacts with companies from Brazil. And obviously, there is the utility, the energy company, oil company, having the sort of control of biofuels in Brazil. But there are company creation programs. They are small companies working in the field of biofuels in Brazil. I know initiatives from companies, industrial companies in Brazil, but I also have certain knowledge that in rural areas there are initiatives using biofuels as a source of energy for them because of the vicinity of the sources. They wouldn't need any transportation for what they have as raw materials, and they can produce their own energy. There are certain initiatives that are now being considered with the support of some NGOs in Brazil. One question, an open question for all of you. The question goes to all of the members of this panel session. How about the introduction of using biomass stemming from transgenic products? Biomass is not supposed to be used. Are there problems, if any, while using this type of biomass? That is perhaps a good idea. We could use transgenic products and in order to enhance the amount of fuel produced. Another question, the food that's produced nowadays by or thanks to biotechnological methods. I mean, the percentage of biotechnology application into food industries. Well, 2005, 20%. 20%. Back in 2005 in Spain. 20%, yes. And in general, Spain is one of the most important consumers and producers, so 20%, it's a lot. I think in Europe, the percentage would be as important or less than that, 20%, around 20. Food intake, products that are stemming from raw materials from biotechnology. Do we have a labeling requirement? Is it specified? Yes, there are rules and regulations that are strictly specified by the European Union. The label, I don't know exactly all the items, but it should be specified clearly that this is a product where there are biotechnological skills, and this is traceability is a requirement, and this is slowing down to a certain extent the implementation of methods and sales. There is a question. The question goes to Professor Soria, Bernat Soria, from the University of Alicante. Scalpel was invented or discovered? Do you think we have to apply ethics? When you have a discovery, you'll have to assess that in the light of ethics prior to using this. I cannot answer about scalpel if it was discovered or invented. I was trying to place technology in its right position. I think that it is a valid consideration. Always we have to give it a thought. An open debate is required where we have data to consider. And I'm saying this, and I say this according to the experience we have regarding clinical trials with new molecules. Prior to introducing a new molecule, there are methods of analysis, toxicological assessment, of preclinical trials, and when we introduce something, it is step by step. Whatever technological use is according to rules and regulations where patient safeness is the most important thing. So thinking about it, giving it a thought, it's always useful, but that shouldn't stop us or refrain or impede the implementation. There are lots of people needing badly the use of biotechnology to solve problems. We cannot have a very long debate without any implementation, because people are dying. And what I was saying, sometimes, the important thing or the message to take home about, when you are 50 plus, it is very difficult to know when we've learned more. But one of the most important things, when a patient asks me, well, and this, when will this be used? When will this allow me to improve the lateral amyotrophic sclerosis patient? And there are clinical questions. 5 years. Will this take 5 years? So we always think that at the end of a project we'll know more. I can tell a lateral amyotrophic sclerosis, well, it will take 5 years, but the patient will say, I have got 2 years to live. So we'll have to give it a thought. Thank you. Last question. And the question goes to Professor Johan Deisenhoffer. Professor Deisenhoffer, there are products, artificial products, like erythropoietin and insulin having saved lives. Do we have a similar product in biotechnology with such a huge impact as other products we've already in use?
Right, when you asked the question, my headphones stopped.
Lo vuelvo a repetir.
Say it again. It is said that there are products like erythropoietin and insulin having solved lots of lives. Can you hear us, Professor? Can you hear us? You cannot hear us.
Intermittent, so.
It seems it's intermittent.
En cualquier caso, si quiere, if you want, you can read really the questions. For example, the insulin have saved a lot of life.
Yeah.
Are there any products, any similar products in biotechnology which could have the same role in order to save many people?
Oh, potentially, yes. I mean, insulin is a protein, and we can make many proteins now with biotechnological methods, and my whole scientific field would not exist probably without this possibility. And some of these proteins, of course, can be used as in medicine, and so sure there will be and probably are, and I cannot think of a suitable example right now. There are more than just insulin that is already produced and helping people to stay alive and healthy.
Okay, thank you very much. Bueno, pues con esto ya.
With this, we've finished this first panel session, session number 5. I'd like to thank all the lecturers for the very interesting presentations and answers. It's been a very interesting debate, and I've learned many things as usual. When I am among scientists, I try to learn, and this is a unique opportunity because we have excellent scientists here. I'd like to thank the organizers. I'd like to thank the organizers of this Campus of Excellence 2009, because I think this is a way to solve problems. We have to start with a debate, to think about it, and to develop ideas. So I think this initiative is a great initiative, having a debate in order to understand what's happening in the world of biotechnology nowadays. First step and fundamental step to solve problems, whatever problem. As a journalist, as a professor, and I see we have colleagues here, I would like to say that dissemination of information and the media is a key issue. It's a cornerstone to give the go-ahead to research and to be able to back up scientists trying to develop new products and new solutions for us to have a better life and to live longer. Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you for your contributions, and we thank the participants for their kind attention. Thank you very much. Stay with us.